Yeah, I'm the director of I oversee the career tech program. A few-year program. Yeah, I collaborate with Auburn, so Auburn is actually, so I've met her. Okay. It's a little bit different, but we still work. Yeah.
When you say things like that.
That's, yeah, vocational, the thing with college, nobody likes to say that term anymore, but it's, so we have, automotive, construction, manufacturing, all of those. And then it's, we have more kind of, hybrid, healthcare, all the. It is, yeah. Yeah, so a lot of cases they do, it's kind of a combination of, kind of all the above. Some will go into a career, some want to explore a 4-year, first kind of get the library. Privates that are in that. So let's see, sometimes they'll get a semester off, or a year off, and then they're college. Yeah, it's classes. Yeah, it's a real thing. You get a lot of kids that are struggling. 2 years now. There, yeah, every year now, we got 3 or 4 kids going.
Good afternoon. Let's call today's Board of Trustees meeting to order at 4:02 p.m. If you could please call the roll.
Bilkowski.
Present.
Dr. Blaven.
Present.
McNamee. Present. Ochaya.
Present.
Pismo. Sheets.
Here.
Stanger. Swanson.
Here.
Dillon.
Here. All right, thank you, everyone. And I should mention, so we do have a couple new board members here, that in order to speak, you'll have to hit the push button. Your microphone will turn green then, and then when you're done speaking, you can turn it off. I omitted that, housekeeping item, my bad. Could we please stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. This McNamee, would you read the mission statement to please?
Certainly. Laketran is committed to providing quality public transportation service to all Lake County residents with special emphasis on meeting the transportation needs of seniors and people with disabilities.
All right, thank you very much. And we now have the oath of office for our 3 newest board members. I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Dodds.
Thank you, Mr. Bilkowski. Well, Mr. Zibble, you're not new, but if the 3 of you would please stand and raise your right hand. Okay, and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Neil Child,
Solemnly swear and affirm
solemnly swear to affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws
that I will support the Constitution and laws
of the United States of America and state of Ohio,
of the United States of America and the state of Ohio,
and that I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially
and that I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially
perform and discharge the duties
perform and discharge the duties
of trustee for Laketran
of trustee for Laketran
according to the best of my abilities,
according to the best of my abilities,
and that I will not be personally
that I will not be personally
interested directly or indirectly
interested directly or indirectly
in any contract led by Laketran.
in any contract led by Laketran.
Congratulations, welcome.
Yeah, they got serious real quick.
Thank you and welcome to the board. I have 3 of your names, sir. I'm just going to go down in chronological order. Dr. Joe Blaven is a local workforce development expert with Mentor Public Schools and Lakeland Community College and the Lake County Board of Commissioners. One of the very interesting things about Dr. Blaven is he understands the impact that transportation barriers can have on the workforce. So he's going to provide a unique opinion for us. And then Renee Ochaya is the director of the Mentor Senior Center. And I believe it's a 5,000 member senior center. So that's very large, and she certainly understands the significance to the growing senior population in the county as a whole. And I'm very pleased that Mr. Zibble, who's been on the board since 2016, yet it seems like it was just yesterday. He, as many of you know, was a retired principal at Burgess and Nyepel. And in his time on the board, Chuck has oversaw the construction of 2 indoor transit centers, the renovation of Laketran's headquarters, and he was instrumental in propane and electric buses, mobile fare collection, and multiple service expansions. So again, I'd like to welcome our 3 newest board members. Okay. Are there any public comments in the room today? Seeing none, before we move on to the approval of minutes, I'll turn the meeting over to Ben for our quick second here.
So one of the things that Brian and I talked about, I think, over time is probably a desire from the board, I don't speak for the board, is to not have the vote always done alphabetically. So we're always, the first person is always called first right now by alphabet. So one of the things a lot of cities and other places do is they rotate who is called to vote first. And so starting today, unless there's objection, Trudy is going to be starting alphabetically and then moving kind of one person down every vote so that the same person isn't being asked to be the first vote on every item. We'll carry that over through different meetings so that the first person alphabetically isn't always doing minutes, but we'll have a rotation of board members so that you're not necessarily the first person on every action item. As long as that is a wish for the board.
Nothing gained.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. For the approval minutes, is there a motion to approve the Laketran Board of Trustees board meeting minutes of May 20th, 2024?
Oh,
Motion made by Ms. McNamee. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Blaven. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
Dr. Blaven.
Aye. I
McNamee.
believe you may have to abstain since you were not present at that meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Dunn?
Yeah,
Perfect.
because you just, although most times the board member can review the minutes and then vote on them, because you were just sworn in, just for purposes of today, that's correct.
Well, in that case, I abstain.
McNamee.
yes.
Ochaya.
I abstain.
Sheets.
Yes.
Swanson.
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes. And then, I will vote yes as well.
Yeah, he's been.
Second.
Trudy, if you let the minutes reflect Mr. Zibble and Max seconded after the vote, Mr. Dr. Blaven's been sworn, his second is not necessarily ineffectual, but for clarity of the record, Mr. Zibble can serve as a second. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ben, if you want to start on the discussion of the sidewalk and program.
Sure. So today is a little bit of a follow-up, but because we have some new folks, I'm going to kind of give everybody just an overview of what the concept is and where we're at. We've had some previous discussions about what to do with some of the remaining COVID money that Laketran has. So one of the options that I gave the board to talk about was a sidewalk grant program. And the reason for that is every person who rides a bus is also a pedestrian. Less so on dial ride, but you still have to move from the bus to the building. So sidewalks are a big deal for transit, and they can significantly improve pedestrian safety and do a bunch of different things to improve the community. And so one of the concepts that I brought up was the idea that we could be a sort of source of funding for cities to apply to for a grant to build sidewalks. One of those important things to keep in mind of this is there is no regulation, there is no requirement. This is a wholly optional activity. The board could say, this is fantastic, let's do it. The board could say, no, thank you, or anything in between. There is no sort of regulation that tells us what we have to do. The concept that we have put forward to date is that a city or a local municipality would apply to Laketran. We would sort of review their application based on the scoring criteria that we put in the packet for you to all review. And then we could potentially award up to 100% of the funding they requested. We could award less than that. There's a lot of sort of options that are out there. So the application and all documents we put in the board packet were sort of our first draft. We could move forward with some of them, none of them, all of them, totally up to the board. The eligibility we envision is that you have to be a municipality of Lake County. It's not open to private businesses or nonprofits. You need to be a government agency. It needs to be along an in-county fixed route. So if we were to do it, our vision was to just build sidewalks anywhere. So you need to be along a transit route. Our vision also was that the area not have a sidewalk or transit amenities. Think roads like Isley or Tyler Boulevard. When the board asked me to take this to the mayor's and managers meeting, really the only significant feedback we got was from the West End mayors. They said, hey, we would love this if it could be used to repair or improve sidewalks. That's something we can consider or not consider. That was sort of the major feedback I got from them. And then obviously one of the core thoughts also be that if we were to do this, the project would need to meet or exceed all ADA sort of design criteria. This is a map. I don't have to spend much time on this. This is our fixed route map. The point of this is to say there are a lot of places there could be some benefit to this in Lake County. Some of our initial concepts were that some ineligible activities would be maintenance or preventative maintenance, decorative landscaping. If it's not along a fixed route, we didn't envision doing any roadway improvements, or if it was a for-profit or non-for-profit entity. Our concept is that the project sponsors, whoever the municipality is, would be responsible for delivering the construction. So Laketran would sort of function as the bank, not the overseer of the construction contract. We don't really want to be in that part of the business. But the project could fund, again, this is totally up to the board, engineering and design, permitting of right of way, any public involvement, bidding, construction, traffic maintenance. Those are sort of all the things involved in a typical sidewalk project. We could choose to fund all of them, none of them, some of them, very, very up to the board. Lastly, when we evaluate them, there will be likely a point system to kind of categorize them. I would ideally, and I think this would be kind of a two-step process. Typically, staff would rank kind of assign points to them, rank them, and then I would think we bring them back to the board for some conversation about which ones they do or do not want to actually fund. But we would try and help organize them so the board can have an opinion about them. Lastly, these are some of the milestone reimbursements. If we were to do this, so the city or whoever the project sponsor was would pay for the project up front, and we would reimburse them. So like if the city will be did this, they would pay for these tasks up front, and we would reimburse them at these stages. These are sort of standard stages in the world. There could be a situation where an individual city may have a challenge with that, like if it was a small jurisdiction like Timberlake or Lakeline, there may be some additional conversation we have if they were to be successful, maybe they could talk to money and there may be some individual conversation we could have if we wanted to. This is a timeline of kind of where we have been in the conversation and where we could go. Again, there is no requirement to do this whatsoever. I have this organized sort of as if the board decided to do it today, this is sort of the quickest we could move. Obviously, moving slower is completely fine also. Yeah, so that is kind of a good overview. Most of it would use local money. There is some chance local sales tax dollars. Depending on the project, there is some opportunity to use our FTA enhancement dollars. That would be project specific and situation specific. So I couldn't tell you the exact how that dollar amount will break out today. It would be heavily dependent on what the person brought to us as a project. And so that's kind of a quick overview. I know at the last meeting, the board asked me to kind of put out, the application and storage documents, which we did, which are in your packet. And then, I know, you asked me what kind of budget we should consider for the beginning. You know, I think it depends a little on the kind of scope the board is interested in, kind of project wise. I would think an initial trial budget between 500,000 and $1 million might be a good place to start. Keep in mind, this is wholly optional. It could happen more than once a year, it could happen once every 3 years. They're really, you know, we set the roadmap on this. Unlike most of our things that have federal government tell us what to do, this is a very open-ended project. So that's kind of an update. Happy to answer any questions anyone has, or go over anything I might have missed.
Ben, can you show the timeline of this?
Sure.
Time.
I do think if the board did want to move forward, it would be good. The board to vote on something, doesn't have to happen today, but I think voting on a budget would be the appropriate next step if the board wishes to take a next step.
Mr. Sheets?
Well, Ben, as you know, I've been totally against any kind of sidewalk project because I still think it's a total responsibility of each city or whoever or organization for sidewalks. If their citizens want them, let them pay for it. I can see this as something that the transit authority should pay for. And if anything, I looked at some of the transit stops. If anything should be done or could be done, it would be putting some kind of upgrade around the bus stops that are in the middle of somebody's street lawn. But I wouldn't want to stand there and rain in the mud and everything. I think that's the more appropriate use for the monies. And I thought we were out of the COVID money. I thought we spent it already. You should say that already?
We received right around $22 million in total in the 3 grants. Approximately $12 million of it will be, quote, used up by the repeal of the sales tax. That does leave us roughly $10 million left to do with as we would like to.
That's not what I understood. Anyway, I think a more appropriate use of any money for sidewalks would be to fix the places where people have to stand away from the bus. I don't know that there's ever been any report, or we've never had any that I know of, maybe you know, of people trying to get to the bus stop and injuring themselves or something. I think that's really a concern of Laketran anyway. We put the bus stop in the middle of the tree lawn, that's the more offensive than anything. I just don't see us funding sidewalks for multiple cities, towns, whatever. It's not a transportation issue, it's not a time concern. It's what I think about.
Ben, I was glad to see that, you mentioned, maintenance items. I'm not a big proponent of maintenance items for the program. However, I think what you've proposed will really improve access for all of the fixed route riders. If we could do a program like this where we know that there's someone, you referenced the example on 91 of the gentleman that has to go out in the road to get to the bus stop. If we can avoid things like that and we can make people's lives easier to use our system, I think that'd be fantastic. In terms of the budget, I'm not a proponent of starting at $1 million though. I think for the first year, I would probably be more in the $500,000 ballpark, but I think you put a lot of work and effort into this and I think it really shows.
My 2 cents on this is, I generally in favor of concept, but I'm already seeing what I sense as creep in it. I thought when we first started talking about this, that the sponsor was gonna be responsible for the design and all the staff office kind of work, and we're already talking now about maybe 50%, 90% of that or whatever would be reimbursed. That was my fear, we talked about that the last time, was making sure that we had guards on this thing, so it didn't become out of control. And I'm getting a sense that we're already creeping in that direction. I think if we're gonna go forward with this, to whatever level of money we intend to, put up, it's gotta be pretty narrow and focused, and I think clearly out of the gate, since this is soft around the edges, that the board needs to be directly involved in it.
Yeah, I'm not sure we got to creep quite yet, because I think we haven't really totally defined, the board could say, hey, we're not interested in any design at all. So I think that those are still.
And my point is, that's where I thought we started with saying we were only going to be talking about the sidewalk, that the design and the implementation and the control was all going to be the sponsor. I thought we were pretty clear on that.
We originally mentioned them doing the work of the process, but that it would be potentially a reimbursable thing we wanted. So maybe got confused the explanation, we didn't, I apologize, but, all of those things are options. You know, we can do none or all or kind of whatever the choice.
Yeah, but just a couple thoughts, listening to Lane and things, I think that I like the concept where you're talking about, bus stops or where those locations are. Possibly that's kind of like a little bit in the middle there where there are sidewalks where those bus stops are. And possibly either extending where those are or working on, like even when we talk about repairs and things, maybe locations where there are bus stops that we're looking at rehabbing those or making those nicer, that might be a nice middle of the road kind of figure it out. I think I like kind of where you put in those, kind of those guardrails that it's gotta be along the route, it just can't be anywhere.
Yeah, our sort of initial concepts were, and again, this doesn't mean it should change, is, we were thinking about roads like Tyler Boulevard and Isley where there's no accessibility at all. So it can be very difficult, or 91 in some places, what do you do there? And so there is a boundary or a guardrail where you shouldn't be doing work, or should, and those are sort of flexible. We could say, hey, we want to do something, the board could set a policy that says, hey, within 50 feet of a bus stop, 200 feet of a bus stop. Or you could say, upon review, an estimated distance away, there's kind of flexibility, how we would want to do that. I do think we would need to define that for like the application process, so the applicants knew like, okay, I can do projects within X distance of a bus stop. As a way to kind of put those guardrails on either end.
Oh, and you mentioned Tyler Boulevard. I thought we were able to have an entrance and exit information, is only not yet. First time on Tyler Boulevard. We have to put software for that. If you drive down Tyler Boulevard, you see a bus stop in the grass. Where are they going? How many people get out and walk there? Do we really even need a bus not there? Let alone any kind of a sidewalk coming. So, I mean, that's a 5-mile stretch there. That's a multi-million-dollar project for sidewalks. It doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't see any sense of this whole project, right? I still think it's the responsibility of each city or village or whatever it is. That's what they pay taxes for. Now, the homeowner is responsible for their sidewalks in front of their houses. That's been known for years and years. But the sidewalks along public access areas are city, village, whatever it is, responsibility. So I just don't understand why we would want to spend money that was given to Laketran for transit. It doesn't make any sense. This is their transit.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to also point out that this is part of infrastructure, which falls under transit. So I do not have a problem with this. And additionally, as far as the design phase, I would be a little concerned about Laketran not having some involvement, including financial, in that design phase. Because if our aim is to make this more accessible to seniors or people with disabilities, we've got to have some control there. We're paying for it, but we have what is useful to them and that is falling under ADA guidelines. I'm concerned about turning that really first phase of a project over to a city completely. I mean, I've seen sidewalks and so on that municipalities have done that are just impossible to navigate. So I think it would be a good role for Laketran to be involved from that very beginning. And if it takes spending a little money on it to keep control of it, I would be in favor of that.
What you just said in your little dissertation there, municipality, they're responsible for the sidewalks. If they're in disrepair, they should fix them. It's not transit money that should fix them. The city should take care of the sidewalks. And I understand about the disability and ADA. I'm walking with a cane. I wouldn't want to walk in the grass either, but it's the city you're in or village or whatever it is that should be taking care of that. That's what they pay their tax money for. I mean, my heavens, this is not a transit item expense. It's just a waste.
We could, if we wanted to answer to kind of address your question on, we could, whether we decided to fund the design and engineering or not, we could make a requirement that we have to approve the design if we're paying. So whether or not the board wanted to pay for that is totally up to you guys, but we could put a requirement in. If you said, hey, we want to build it, where we say Laketran staff has to review and approve, make sure the accessibility is up to our standards, even if we're not paying for the design. So it's up to you guys. If you did or didn't want to do that, but we could take care of it within the application.
Another thing, what kind of liability do we have by paying for the sidewalk in the city?
With the project sponsor being the city and them doing actual construction, it would take our liability sort of away, which is the main reason we wanted to have them handle it themselves. That would rely on the city. I make sure, I don't double check Brandon, but I'm pretty sure it'd be the city.
Yeah, we'd have an indemnification provision in any such agreement. We would have an indemnification provision in any such agreement.
You know, one thing we definitely wouldn't want to do is be the manager of the project, is Laketran should not be one going to bid, dealing with easements or citizens, that would be the city responsible for them.
I have a question. For the areas that we are considering putting in sidewalks, is there a need for sidewalks there in general or specifically for the bus routes?
So we probably don't have the best handle on that. The cities, we imagine, do, which is part of why we kind of said, let them bring their projects to us. And then we can kind of go over the merits of them, because they may know factors that we don't. And so I would imagine that in having gone through the grant process ourselves a lot, you get the opportunity to explain why your project has the most merit. And so that's what we would be expecting back from the cities. And so we would get a better understanding of like, hey, this is a really big need, here's a weakness here, and then we could say, which one of these best fit our vision for how this project might work.
Thank you.
If this project were to move forward, I wouldn't mind if there was a little bit of discussion on what we think the appropriate amount would be to possibly allocate towards a 1 year start of this program. Again, I was at the Ben had proposed somewhere between 500 and a million. I was at the lowest end of that at $500,000. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we would spend every penny of it if we received projects that we did not believe were warranted. But again, I welcome any discussion on the budget.
I would suggest we walk before we run, so I would be in favor of limiting the amount of money until we figure out how it's going to unfold, what controls, and this thing may fall on its face, or it may be a great success, but until we get a better handle on it, I would suggest we take it easy.
Are we doing a project at a time rather than having some number out there that we have allocated as a budget number? Can we just take it on a project at a time and see what kind of reaction we would get from cities? I mean, if you go out and advertise, yeah, we got $500,000 to $1 million here to make sidewalks in the cities of Lake County, you'd have people say, hey, that's great, let's go apply for it. And the city is shirking their responsibility for taking care of the sidewalks in the first place. I think this is just a long way to spend the money that's been allocated to repairs.
You could completely do as many or as few or zero projects after the application cycle if you like. If most grant applications give you a, like how much can you ask for type of thing for the process, so it'd probably be good to say not more than, but we could put language that says, or it could be less than, so you may want to put some type of cap.
Yeah, just so I can clarify, make sure that I'm on the same page. Am I correct in thinking with this concept? It's the idea that we would essentially, it's an infrastructure type project where we have these shelters throughout our bus stops. And whether it's sidewalks going to those stops, coming from those stops. This is an opportunity for us to invest in that area. Right, I mean, is that, yes, that's what I'm thinking about. So when I think of like Tyler, where there's like a bus stop right now, there's no sidewalk or anything, that's hypothetically.
Probably no passengers either.
Right.
Probably no passengers either.
Well, there's a lot of employers there, but yes, I mean, but like, so my thought, just understanding this concept would be, let's say we have all these employers up and down Tyler Boulevard. And if we put a bus out there where it's, congested with a lot of businesses, we basically have some sidewalks that we build out to make it easier for those.
I disagree with that. I don't think that was the intent, or let me twist the words a little bit.
Sure.
I think the intent was not, and I think we had to get rid of the idea, I think actually the name sidewalk is probably a misleading term. The nature of the discussion, as I understood, was more in terms of creating safe, direct access to the bus stop. So don't think in terms of putting sidewalks the length of Tyler Boulevard, The idea is this bus stop that's now on grass is 15 feet off the road. We want to put an access walkway to and from the road to that bus stop. And that was the nature where we started, we're not going to, I don't know if we've ever talked about bringing a sidewalk a half mile down kind of thing.
But I like what you're saying, I mean, that's a great concept.
The whole concept, at least in my mind, was, so suppose you're walking with a cane, or suppose if you're wheelchair bound, you're trying to push from the stop, that's grass to get over to the bus. Well, I think the idea was more, let's get a hard service to get from that stop over to the bus stop itself.
Yeah.
At least that was in my mind where we were with the conversation.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you guys also like the idea of possibly either adding, more infrastructure, and the idea that if there isn't a shelter, possibly having a shelter, that would be part of this. This could be almost an incentive on the cities that they didn't have some of that in this town.
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges of putting out infrastructure is often who controls the site. If it's in the right of way, it's very easy. But if it involves a homeowner or a property owner, then there's more to it. And our thought process is we put that onus on the cities. So that we're not the one, you know, if the city knows, hey, this is a great place for one, the business or the resident is happy with it, great, versus like trying to, you know, put something in someone's front yard who didn't like it. It would be better handled by a city than probably us. Usually when we put them up, it's reactionary to the property owner asking for it. But it could be, you know, it's, again, this is a very open-ended question, so it could be whatever.
So ultimately, if we have a budget of that 500,000, we ultimately still have the proposals come in, we still have to. We're going through with those.
Yeah, what I would imagine is we would advertise the program with the criteria that we presented, or if we'd like to take another pass at that, we can. We would have those applications come into us, staff would kind of rank them. I kind of think of it akin to an HR department when you're screening candidates. We would sort of screen out the poorer ones, or we would let the board look at all of them, and then we would bring you the final product to say, hey, take a look at which one you like, do you not like. We can even have the municipality come and present and explain to us what their thought process is and what their needs are, so the board can hear firsthand why the project might be good. And then the board could decide, let's fund none or all. It would be wholly up to the board at that point to advance each individual project or none of them.
I think that was one of the most important things is that, the board would be reviewing the projects, but too, if the projects are not satisfactory, we don't have to spend whatever we set the budget amount to. We can spend half of it, we can spend a quarter of it, it doesn't have to be the entire budget spent on this. That's just a maximum we're willing to commit.
You know,
I'm for none.
the board would have to, in my mind at least, the board would need to approve each project. They would need to say like, yes, you know, kind of like when we do a contract, you approve me to enter into a contract with us, the board would say, we authorize this to sign a grant agreement with this municipality for an amount not to exceed this. And then I would probably attach, I would work with Brandon to kind of attach to the resolution, the grant application, so that it's a narrowed, you know, once we have seen the presentation, the board understands where it is, we would narrowly attach the scope the municipality gave us to the funding, so they couldn't kind of, you know, as additional, but if you do any kind of mission critical.
So what type of action?
I think if the board would like to move forward, it would be appropriate to take a vote to approve the sidewalk grant program to go out for applications with an estimated budget of X. And then the next step again would be when we bring things back to you with a similar time frame as you have on the screen here. And I can forward this out to everybody.
Ben, are you proposing the 500,000?
You know, I think construction is very expensive, so I think, personal opinion, I think $500,000 is a good place to start. And that's, I think we can be very transparent on the estimate.
The word grant in here is, we're talking about granting the cities, Laketran is doing the granting. You know, we talk about grants so much, and this is not a grant we're applying for to get money for this. We already have the code money for this, is that your point?
And we would be the grantor in this case.
So I mean, the money is not, we're not applying for a grant anywhere for money to do this program. We are, Laketran is not, is that correct? We're talking about being the grantor of money we already have.
Generally, yes.
Correct.
That's
Yeah, the caveat I would say, Lane, is there could be, so we have to spend 1% of our federal grant on.
Yes, I get all that, don't worry.
So,
I'm just trying to clarify that this is not something we're applying for. This is something we're going to be giving an opportunity for somebody to ask for.
I need to let him finish what he's gonna say, Wayne, because there is potential grant money for us to get as part of this program.
yeah, so we could spend some of that enhancement grant money on this project, in which case we would apply with the feds to use that money for this project. So there is a case where a portion of this would be funded by existing grants as part of the project.
1% we have to spend is not a grant, is it?
It is, it's what's 1% of the federal grant. So
Okay.
we apply for it, and we, in that grant, we line item out the projects, so it is.
We have that every year.
We do that every year, yes.
Yeah, never mind. It's not anything new.
Okay,
Is there any other discussion on the sidewalk grant program? Yeah. Mr. Little.
Ben, do you have a document prepared that you're gonna send out to the cities?
So we have the application was in the board packet along with sort of the scoring criteria. We would probably put together a notice of funding opportunity or a NOFA, which is the typical thing, and send a letter to every jurisdiction and say, hey, this project is available, here's a copy of the application, here's the schedule and the deadline. So long answer is yes, we would notify every municipality and like.
Sorry, I missed that.
That's okay.
Then, if we pass the budget, would staff time be part of the budget for sending out the application and reviewing the application?
Not envision staff time as part of the budget now.
Thank you.
Humor me a little bit. Actually throw something at me if you want. I'm sort of fixated on this name. I think we call it sidewalk grant program. We're just asking citizens or cities to come in and say, we need a half-mile sidewalk, we pay for that. Can we call it something different, like bus stop access program or something like that?
Transit access program.
I just think the wording is sort of important to set expectations, and I just think the sidewalk grant program, it works in here because we know what we're talking about, but, and maybe over time, the cities would have it as well, but it just strikes me that we in the wrong direction.
Yeah, we can, I mean, we can use the name Brian, just lay it out if you want, we can think of something else, that doesn't have the same phraseology either.
I didn't know you had such a marketing side to it. That's something new at the beginning.
All very complex.
You can fix route, bus out, I usually help them that one, I'm sure we come up with something that's a little bit less.
Yeah, well, what's nice is in the proposal draft that you shared, I mean, the first couple sentences do a really nice job. I think a new name would be good, I think that'd be great, but I like that it says Laketran seeks application for Lake County municipalities to design and construct sidewalks in their communities that would have, but that says specifically along Laketran's in-county fixed routes. Sidewalks improve access to Lake Mills transportation services, and then basically saying how it's improving it specifically to access the bus stops. So you've done a really nice job of articulating that.
And I do think, Gary, just sprucing up the quick name could help out a little bit, I think your point is well taken. Are there any other questions or comments?
Are you looking for a motion tonight?
Well, I was gonna ask for one short here.
So moved.
So at this time, is there a motion to approve the commencement of the sidewalk grant program to be renamed with a budget not to exceed $500,000?
So moved.
Motion, I believe, was made by Mr. Swanson, seconded by Ms. Madden. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
Lashaya,
Yes.
Sheets,
No,
Swanson,
Yes.
Zibble,
Yes.
Dr. Laven,
Yes.
McNamee.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. The next item is, it looks like I'm gonna turn the meeting over to Matt for our financial presentation.
All right, so the good news is there's no surprises operationally. We are on track to roll the budget. Revenue is consistent as expected, slightly favorable to the budget, 196K. Operating expenses are favorable, are up to 800K, contributing to a positive operating income of over $1 million. You can see the breakdown of expenses.
again, on track, we are, favorable on our, new hires, benefits are driving favorability in the wages, lower IT contracts, lower fuel costs, less spending on miscellaneous admins, ads, meeting dues, et cetera. So this is all somewhat seasonal. We will have some of that come back, and experience higher expenses in some of the out months, but, it's nice to have that initial cushion. From a cash flow perspective, we remain very strong. 59 million for Laketran, 450K for SDS, over $1 million for Jaga. Additionally, we've got Q2 reimbursement, echo draws that are not yet represented. We'll see that next month. It's about $2.5 million. We'll also be applying for additional reimbursement in Q3. I'm not sure that amount yet, but cash flow very, very positive. Committed funds, 21, almost 22 million. Made up of the operating reserve, the work group projects, and the grant commitments. Leaving 37 million uncommitted. We've got just over 7 million for projected potential capital projects. Those have not been approved yet. So again, from a cash flow perspective, we're sitting pretty good. I think it's important to note our sales tax reduction goes into effect on July 1st. So we won't feel the effects of that down the road. Now they are 2 months behind. So we won't actually get, well, we don't get the funds until 2 months after it was collected. So the impact of that will really hit us in September and going forward from there. And STS, very minimal volume of STS month to month. Revenue will pick up in the summer months, so we'll start to see that ticking up. It's very cyclical. The operating expenses that said are favorable, and we'll see those tick up a little bit as the revenue ticks up, primarily related to the wages and benefits, but not quite there yet. Again, we expect that volume. In fact, we're already experiencing that volume ticking up. We're probably staying that way through the summer. Yeah, we're all through the middle. All right, Jaga. Jaga is a little bit of a different animal. We are running behind compared to budget on the revenue. That's only going to last one more month. We're somewhat at the mercy of the state based on when we get the expense reimbursement. So that did happen in May for Jaga. We had an additional just under 300K. So you're going to see that revenue line come back in line. And you can see the expenses, we are running favorable. Lower contract services is the primary driver, as well as labor and fuel costs being under budget as well. So operationally, they are running at a negative right now from an operating income, but next month that's going to be a difference. Any questions I can answer for anybody? Very good, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the April 2024 Laketran STS and Geauga Transit operating financial statements subject to audit and capital plan review?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. McNamee. Is there a second?
Sorry.
Second by Mr. Swanson. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
Lachaya,
Yes.
Sheets,
Yes.
Swanson,
Yes.
Civil,
Yes.
Dr. Blaven,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. At this time, we will now talk about our grants for the next cycle.
Good evening. So for our new board members, every year, Laketran comes to the board and asks for the authority to apply for various grants to the federal government. And so that is this action item. So the federal fiscal year begins, October 4th, 2024, and will end, in September of 2025. We have a lot of different grant programs that we're eligible for. I've listed them here. Some of them are formula programs, so we get money annually from the Federal Transit Administration. Other grants are discretionary, which competes with other transit agencies across the country, for those dollars. And we use our federal funding for a variety of projects, mostly our capital projects, bus purchases, construction, passenger amenities, consulting services, things like that. This resolution will also include Laketran's ability to apply for grants on behalf of Geauga Transit. And so we use federal dollars for a lot of important work here at Laketran. And so approving this resolution allows us to continue business as normal. I'm happy to discuss any of the grant programs if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions at this time?
This is just normal operation.
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
Can you go to the motion screen, please?
It is time to their motion to approve resolution 2024-017, authorizing the filing of applications with the Federal Transit Administration for federal fiscal year 2025 and operating administration of the United States Department of Transportation for federal transportation assistance authorized by 49 USC Chapter 53, Title 23 of the United States Code and other federal statutes administered by the Federal Transit Administration, including Northeast Ohio Area Coordinating Agency, NOACA, for Cleveland Urbanized Area Federal Transit Administration, FTA, funding from the Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Program, Section 5310.
Could you repeat that? So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Sheets, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. McNamee. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
Sheets,
Yes.
Swanson,
Yes.
Civil,
Yes.
Dr. Glavin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
O'Shea.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now be reviewing our plans for Geauga Transit new positions.
Okay, good evening. So now I'm gonna talk about a grant that is impacting staffing. So on behalf of Geauga Transit, Laketran was awarded the Ohio Workforce Mobility Partnership Grant. And this grant is going to be used to transport rural members of the workforce to significant places of employment. Geauga Transit has already had conversations with 2 employers, Montville Plastics and Great Lakes Cheese. And they have identified the need to transport their workforce, parts of their workforce over second and third shift. So these are the Amish specifically. And we are looking to launch this service the 4th quarter of this year. And we're looking to align this with Rosa Parks Day on December 1st. This expanded service will require us to have additional staffing. And these are in Geauga dispatch. It'll be 1 part-time dispatcher and 1 full-time dispatcher. And we are looking to promote these positions with our August hiring event, which is already scheduled for August 15th, where we're going to be hiring some drivers for Laketran. So we'll be able to promote these positions as well. And these positions will be granted by the dollars we'll receive with these grant dollars. And the organizational chart shows where the positions will be added to the organizational chart. So with that being said, are there any questions?
Yeah, just a real quick one, just for my
and information. How much was the Ohio Workforce Mobility Partnership funding that was awarded?
That would be something under the list. Yes.
We were awarded $1.2 million for operating expenses over 3 years.
That seems like I have covered this. Can ask. Okay, any other questions around here?
I'm sorry?
Does that continue every year?
It is a one-time grant, but when I wrote the grant, I wrote it for 3 years. So we get the 1.2 million in 3 years. So divided by 3 is like 350,000 a year.
So at the end of 3 years, do we fire the people we hired? What?
I mean, that question, was asked, but it is my belief that it'll be so successful that Geauga Transit revenue will go up and we will be able to continue to sustain these positions.
Is there anything that requires that to to do something about it if it doesn't? I mean, what? I guess it's kind of open-ended. We got this money for this period of time, and if it runs out, I understand your concept, but is there anything in there that somebody's supposed to watch how this takes place and make sure it happens and things like that?
Well, the money was awarded to Laketran, so, we're responsible for implementing the program at Geauga Transit, so we're the one responsible.
So they granted in the funding this in 3 years.
No, so the state has metrics for this and they'll be monitoring the program and determining its success throughout it. So we are awarded the money, but the state will be monitoring it regularly. And in the event either the program is unsuccessful even at 3 years, or for some reason the positions no longer have funding, the employees will either be laid off or offered other positions.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve resolution 2024-018 to modify Laketran's organizational structure by adding 1 full-time Geauga Transit dispatcher and 1 part-time Geauga Transit dispatcher? So moved. Motion made by Mr. Zippel, is there a second? Second by Dr. Glavin. Sure, if you could please call the roll.
Swanson,
Yes.
Civil,
Yes.
Dr. Glavin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes,
Ochaya,
Yeah,
Sheets.
No. Okay, thank you, everyone. We are going to continue along our Geauga Transit, bus line. Joanna, you can take over, please.
I'm actually gonna step in for Joanna, not that she's perfectly capable of doing this, but I thought, since this is a little bit of a newer concept in how we manage projects, I thought it'd be good for me to take the lead. So Geauga Transit has been awarded funds from ODOT to complete a number of sort of small level repair activities at their facility. So for some background, their building was constructed in '86. In addition, was put on in '02. They have about 4,600 square feet of administrative and operation space and 13,600 square feet of bus storage. They're funded by ODOT, as we all know. So as part of the grant to ODOT, we kind of Geauga Transit lists the items that need to be maintained or they seek repair for. And then ODOT decides which ones they kind of feel like funding, and it is sort of random sometimes. And so, their total award from the state for this year in GRF money, which is State General Revenue Fund, is $362,290. And it is for the list of projects you see before you. There's a concrete asphalt repair replacement, a window and door replacement, radiant heater replacement, security camera replacement, a roof and siding, or a roof de-icing system repair, and some sewer maintenance. And so normally when Laketran does these projects, they are significantly higher dollar amounts. You're talking, for us, these projects are usually a couple $100,000. For Geauga, they're in the $30,000 to $60,000 range each. And so sort of like not a renovation, but a small group of projects. We thought it would be easier and more time efficient for the board to say, hey, we have a total amount of projects that need to be done. This is the list of the projects, and this is the total budget for all of them. And so we brought it to the board as one action item instead of us going through the procurement process and doing each individual one at the board level. We'd slow the projects down and it would make the process kind of unwieldy for all. So our concept was to bring it to the board as a sort of a group of projects instead of each individual project. So the project costs, we've already done part of the grant project, is they have to get estimates from vendors to provide to the state, which has already been completed, and the projects range from sort of $25,000 to $90,000 over that one. It came in that budget. And so they all do get bid individually, they go through the procurement process individually, but we thought it would just be easier for all involved to have one board action item.
And say again, the 362 or whatever it was is total, there's no matching funds?
Yeah, so the state is providing, I should explain that, I'm sorry, general revenue fund for the state does not require any match whatsoever. So these projects are 100% funded by the state of Ohio.
Any other questions or comments? At this time, is there a motion to approve resolution 2024-019 authorizing the CEO or his designee to enter into contracts for facility maintenance and improvement projects at Geauga Transit Administrative Maintenance Facility at a cost not to exceed $363,000.
So
Motion made by Mr. Swanson and seconded by Ms. McNamee. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
Civil,
Yes.
Dr. Blaven,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Oshia,
Yeah,
Sheets,
Yes.
Swanson.
yes,
Thank you, everyone. I will now turn the meeting over to our CEO for the 6-month look ahead and the CEO report.
So just for our new folks, every month, I go through a list of projects that I expect us, my staff and myself to be bringing to the board. And so if you have anything that you have a question about, something you're not sure about, feel free to ask the question out, or we can have a conversation offline, wherever you prefer. The idea is that you aren't sort of sitting here on board meeting day, like, what is this thing that I didn't hear about before? Our meeting in July, we don't have a meeting in July unless the board wants to change that. Normally that's our scheduled off month. So, we still have nothing scheduled for July. That's a weird way for me to say that. In August, we have bus inspection contractor. This is a result of the number of dial ride buses we ordered, or the board approved first in May. We will be required by the FDA to have an in-factory inspector. We've done on other projects, that's not a normal thing. It's actually kind of a nice backup to have to make sure they are being assembled and built up to our standards. We will have Geauga's propane infrastructure phase 1. So last meeting I mentioned that we moved this back. We were planning to have the board approve this earlier this year, but when we went out for bids, the project came in significantly over the engineer's estimate. So the project budget has been $250,000 and it continues to be. The project we put out originally came back with items at $450,000 range instead of $250,000, which is obviously way over what the project can fund. So we have done some re-engineering to get the project down to $250,000, and we're in the procurement process right now to bring that project back to the board within budget. CT Consultants has been the one doing the budget for us, so it was a little frustrating when we went out to bid with that knowing our budget at $250,000, got back prices at $450,000, but we have removed parts of the project made it within budget. That won't ultimately affect this project, although we are going to need to seek grant funding in the future for some gasoline infrastructure at Geauga that was originally supposed to be part of this project. It just didn't fit.
Can I ask you one question while you're there?
Sure.
Haven't we had a history of CT being off on their bids?
This is not the first time that they have come back to us with numbers that were wildly off. We had a conversation with them. We were very frustrated with the results of this bid item. We were very upfront with them what our project budget was, and I'm not sure if they just tried to make us happy by putting unrealistic, project together. But, yeah, you're correct, it's not the first time we've had an issue with them. We have moved some of our newer projects to, Bowen to see how they do. Their estimate for headquarters was much more accurate, than CT's, so we're gonna try them out and see how they do. Okay, thank you. Also in, August, we have dispatch radios, so, this is sort of the theme, you guys have heard this year about the Motorola sunsetting of radio equipment. Our dispatch, equipment is not immune from that. It really has not been touched since, I think, roughly 2014, according to Tony, to convert that was the year. Motorola basically gives you stuff that lasts 10 years and then they stop supporting it, and if you need to do anything to it, it just doesn't work. So it's very frustrating. We'll bring this action to the board to install dispatch, radios in our dispatch office. I would really like this to be one of our last major radio purchases. We'll always need radios to some extent at Laketran because they interface with the EOC and police and fire, and having two-way radios is very important. Using the system we use right now with the county is incredibly expensive. We are piloting a system where the bus driver will have a radio mic connected to their tablet in the bus. So we're already paying for a tablet in the bus that has cell service to it. So just like the cell phone, it's capable of two-way communication. So we are piloting a process to move, instead of using a separate radio in the tablet, we're piloting a project to put all that in one device, which would save a significant amount of money. Radios per bus right now are about $5,000 a piece. And so if we could reduce that and still have radios as backup, but not necessarily rely on them for every single bus to have one, we could save a significant amount of money. But in the meantime, our dispatch radios are to the point that they do have to be replaced. The other item on agenda here is a little bit of a newer one. So we have had some, I'll say, issues with our main electrical distribution equipment. It was sort of never intended to be part of the construction project because it was a high dollar item. And we didn't realize that it was in the condition that it was in. We've had two failures in our system. So this is the main electrical panel in the generator room. It has essentially failed twice. One time the power went out and the generator kicked on like it was supposed to. The equipment did not work correctly and the generator continued to run for another, we're estimating around 36 hours. And there was another time that the system failed and we couldn't get our replacement part to how to make it automatically work. And I am not the best at explaining the exact details of this, but ultimately we hired Tech Engineering, which is a local electrical engineering firm, to come out and say, hey, what is going on with this equipment? We are not specialists, and some advice. They gave us a couple task orders. One of them was to test the actual generator we have itself, to make sure it was good. We know the engine, we know the engine is good. We are mechanics, we work on engines all the time. We did a couple load bank tests on the actual generator itself. It all passed. So the generator itself is fine and not in need of any major work right now. The building side, though, the main distribution panel that feeds the entire building and that is the transfer switch for the generator is the part that they have identified as faulty. He knew the brand of the transfer switch and said basically that these were problematic since they were installed and kind of listed off a list of issues with them. So we asked him to help us with design and engineering for what needed to be replaced. Is the budget still inside or is it come down?
This is the correct.
Okay, I couldn't remember. So what needs to be done, and I named like Tim Poole from Tech Engineering here to kind of explain this in more detail in August. But essentially what we need to do is replace our main electrical circuit breaker and transfer switch. It is a pretty difficult project. It is actually good that it's being done outside the contract, the construction project, because we would pay 10%, overhead to the contractor who's in the project. So we'll bid it separately and do it as a work, a project of our own. But it's one of those things that if left the way it is, it's prone to additional failures. There really don't make additional replacement parts for it. And, it's had two kind of significant failures. So everyone's recommendation that we talk to is to replace it. I don't, Keith, I look, did I miss anything? Okay.
It's very disappointing that this kind of thing wasn't realized. How old was the building
30 years old.
and how old was the
30.
electrical stuff?
It's original from the.
That should have been one of the first things they would do in a major reconstruction of a building like this. I mean, that somebody should be held reliable or something for this. This is crazy. This should never have happened, for God's sakes. How big is the generator?
I don't know how to, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Or how much, what kind of circuit do we have, you know?
The building is set by a 1600 amp circuit motor.
Not for crying out loud, just missing something like that. Use general contractors or whoever CT or whoever it was, I almost think I gotta go after them because this is gonna be expensive.
It is gonna be the estimates that we're getting is about $400,000.
How much?
$400,000.
That's pretty expensive.
Yeah, yes, no disagreement. It's not necessarily one of those things that I akin this to like when your furnace goes bad in winter, you don't want to replace it, but you don't have much of a choice.
That's the part that's too bad. We've been blindsided by somebody else's, not doing their job. End of story. Disappointing to say the least.
Yeah,
Are you done with the, moving the power equipment? Excuse me. Are you done with the emergency power equipment? I wanted to go back to the ratings.
oh, sure, go for it.
Okay, are these radios, handheld, or are they all tied to the buses as they are now?
So the radio that I talked about in general, there's a radio physically mounted in every bus today. We do have some handheld devices for when buses, radio in the bus fails, we hand out a handheld radio until it can be repaired. This particular action item is specifically for the radio system that is used in our dispatch, which is a combination of traditional radio infrastructure along with computer-based dispatching.
So this will not involve replacement of the radios on the buses.
That is correct. This is just for our dispatch office.
This is a comment, so you understand where I was going with this. Originally, the Laketran buses had all handheld radios. And I believe it was in the last replacement that they went to stationary in the buses. And I actually experienced a situation that I was always concerned about in that I was on a lift that stopped midway. And it wasn't exactly level. Not as level as either the driver or I would have liked it. And she had to leave me on the lift, hanging on, going to radio dispatch that she needed assistance. And I thought of that so many times and then it happened. That's why I've always had a concern and a greater one now when the drivers are not equipped with a radio outside of the bus. So I understand it doesn't have anything to do with this, but as long as we're on the topic of radios, I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Well, we will keep that in mind for our planning purposes.
Okay, thank you.
In September, we still have on the agenda a strategic planning retreat. Haven't received a ton of feedback yet about this. We want to still have all the meetings, talk about this, or if we would like to do anything else. So I'll be kind of talking to Brian here in the next couple of weeks, so you can get a pulse of where we want to go with that. We do have one item on the agenda for that one, which is the approval of the DE goal. So, our district,
It's not the goal.
it's the plan, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the plan that stipulates what the goal is, and kind of gets it guides our whole DE process. It's a regular action, which we do every 3 years. We have, in October, we have the upgraded gasoline tank, which we had some conversation about. This project, is also being done by TP. We have, because of the issues we had with the estimate on the propane infrastructure in Geauga, we are changing the procurement process for this item to be what's called design build. This is where you hire a contractor and a designer as a partnership, so that the vendor who's installing it is involved in the design process upfront. So we avoid the same problems we had with propane infrastructure. So the first time we've used this procurement method, it's standard in the world and in the industry, but we think it's a good tool for this project because the contractors that build it will be directly involved in the design process, making sure we don't sort of miss anything or create any budget issues. In November, we have the review of the budget for next year. Just as a reminder, the state recently informed us that Geauga Transit is going to have to move to a state fiscal year. So we will be approving or requesting approval in December for the Laketran and the Geauga budget. Then the Geauga budget will come back to the board halfway through next year for approval. We're going to be approving sort of a short Geauga budget and then another one right after that. We have our annual fuel contract. This is the same thing we've done for many years, where we go out for bid for fuel with a consortium that is led by the Portage Area Transit Authority. In December, we will ask for approval of the 2025 budget. And then in January, we have a approval of our HVAC maintenance contract. So this is a normal process every 3 to 5 years. We go out to bid for HVAC preventive maintenance services. We timed this procurement to line up with the building being finished in the new format, so that all of the sort of preventive maintenance items that are done now also include all the new stuff that will be part of the new building. So that is the last thing I have on my list. If there's any questions. For the CEO report, the H2 projects, things are moving along well. We do have one section that is a little bit behind schedule because of the water damage that I've kind of reported in the past. They've been working on that diligently, and they are probably about 30 to 40% of the way through with that fixed component. We do have some sort of big moves happening in July. So the dispatch offices are scheduled to be ready. The date today is July 18th, assuming that continues to be the exact date. We will start moving our dispatch office from their old office into the new office at the end of this month, really in a couple days. Maintenance will be moving into some temporary offices in the back of their area. And then the driver's room will move around that same date with dispatch. So that'll be a big one. All of us drivers will be sort of kicked out of their normal room and their normal place. Big instruction with that is the mailboxes that the drivers use on a daily basis. It doesn't sound like a big thing. We're worrying about your mailbox. We are reusing the current set of mailboxes, so they have to be disassembled, moved from their current spot into the new building, which will cause a disruption in mail flow, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you think about the fact that that's the primary way we communicate with 200 of our employees, it is going to pose some challenges for us during that new process. If anyone would like a tour or anything, you already want to talk to let me know, I'll be happy to walk through. Our IT strategic plan, we are working along that process. We have completed company-wide training on the new HRS system for UKG and rolling it out on payroll this summer. So far, employees are actually pretty happy about it. It will give us some better tools with their reviewing their paychecks and everything. So it's people are really excited about it. We really don't have any self-service options for employees now, so it'll really improve that. For our hiring process, just to kind of keep the board up to date with this, we have a new class of 19 drivers that began on June 11th. We are continuing to recruit mechanics and vehicle servicers. I just want to give an nod to Mr. Swanson for giving us a lead on a place that does get some mechanics. That was greatly appreciated, and the maintenance department has been following up on that. So if we get any, I'll be sure to let you know. Our IT project manager job has been posted, it's currently still open, and most of all, candidates we've gotten so far have not been qualified and been kind of like, let's just say they need a little more experience. For Sandy Dial we kicked off a meeting with Novus, which is the new scheduling software on June 10th, and officially began putting the software kind of process into motion. We're still expecting to start service later this year, but we did experience some delays getting the software portion lined up. So we may need to quickly start date back, but we're going to continue to work forward with as quickly as possible. For SCS service, you all should have received an email from me. So we had a fire on an SCS bus. We did track it back to a hung brake on the roadside dual. So basically the brake did not disengage like it was supposed to, leading to an overheat situation where it caught the bus on fire. As I reported in the email, there were no injuries, the bus driver was fine. Everything was handled in the exact way, everyone was trained to do it. It does result in that bus being a total loss. That bus is 20 years old. It just doesn't make sense to put the money into replacing it. Not replacing it, but fixing it. The board has already authorized its replacement. So the SCS buses that were ordered earlier this year, that bus was scheduled to be replaced with those buses. It does put us in a very challenging situation for this summer's STS contracts. It's a busy time for STS, so we happen to know that Akron Metro was retiring the same type of buses at this time, so we reached out to them, keep the schedule. I think it's taken a trip down there tomorrow to see if they'd be willing to let us have their, they have two buses they may consider transferring to us. As far as what we do with the loss of that current bus, I have asked OSHA to give me an analysis of if it would be best to file an insurance claim to get the dollars back for that bus, or to keep it off of our loss history. When a bus is within its federal lifespan, which for that bus would be 12 years, it was 20 years old. If it was within 12 years, we are given full replacement value. So if that bus was 11 years and 11 months old, we would get insurance money for a full replacement value of that bus. And the bus is 20 years old, they give us market replacement value. Market replacement value of that bus is very low, it's probably $10,000 to $15,000. So depending on what they tell me it will do to our sort of pool contribution factors and the things they use to determine our rates, it may be beneficial to not file an insurance claim, but I don't know the answer to that yet. If it is, we'll certainly file it and receive those dollars back. But I'm kind of waiting on their analysis for us. If we were getting a new bus, we were buying a new bus, or if that was a bus that was in service, and it was in a federal asset life, it'd be a little different, we'd be required to do that. But because of the nature of this specific bus, it may or may not be beneficial for us to actually file an insurance claim. Because keep in mind, it's not, I use the term insurance, it's self-funded insurance, so we're paying ourselves back essentially. So it may not be a good idea to do that, depending on how it plays out. The sales tax suspension, we have distributed postcards, all businesses in Lake County, and Julia has put several ads out around the community to remind everybody that the sales tax cut starts July 1st. And then lastly, the grant tracker, grant tracker has been updated. We took off some of the stuff that's already kind of happened, and it has been thinned down to the existing projects with some any outcomes that are waiting. So before I get to the map, real quick for quick operations reports, anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you.
So we are going to be going over April 2024. So battle ride ridership increased over 12% over 2023. Local route ridership 32% increased over 2023, and park and ride ridership a 26% increase over 2023. I do want to add that in April, we were actually discouraging people from riding on April 8th, which was the Solar Eclipse Day, and we're still seeing increased ridership trends like that. So that's a really good. Down the road, extended hours, we are seeing still an increase in ridership in the AM shifts, as well as the PM extended hour. It's kind of plateaued out, leveled out a little bit there, so we'll see how that continues going forward. And then here's just the ridership by mode, which is just showing going back to January of 2020. And then denials are actually very low. We're doing really great with that. These hiring events and classes have really helped keep drivers on the road and make sure that we keep the service or providing service to the citizens. That's all I got.
Okay, any questions for Ben or Matt? Seeing none, is there any old business in the room today? Also seeing none, is there any new business in the room? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn today's board of trustee meeting?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Mackey, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Swanson. Sure, if you can please call the roll.
Dr. Layton,
Yes.
Anthony,
Yes.
Bashaya,
Yes.
Sheets,
Yes.
Swanson,
Yes.
Little.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned at 5:27 today.
Congratulations.